God is man's immediate supply, and yet help often arrives from places we never thought to look. From strangers, old friends, chance meetings, and unexpected channels that feel like miracles in motion. I know you've been there, struggling, praying, worried, thinking the aid would come through the usual doors, the ones you can see, the ones you control. But then a message pings from someone you barely know, a parcel arrives without explanation, a casual remark leads to opportunity. Who sent you that blessing? Probably God. That's Florence Scovel Shinn's invisible supply in action. Because when you align with the unstoppable supply law, you begin to expect help in unusual packages. You say, I have divine provision at all times, and suddenly, there it is. In the voice of a friend, the kindness of a stranger, the wisdom dropped in a random email. The loop is sacred. You plant the affirmation, you keep the faith, you stay watchful, and supply shows up from unexpected angles. You begin to ask not just, how will I get what I need, but, who is bringing it for me today? And then someone appears. That's the connection point where fear breaks. It's not about your plan anymore. It's about divine orchestration. A stranger's check, a contact remembered, a piece of advice you didn't seek but needed. You wake up to a world where provision has outlets beyond your blueprint. Secondary hook: next time you need help, pause and wonder, who is God sending this through? Because your rescue might come disguised in a regular conversation, a casual handshake, or even a delayed flight. When you expect help through unusual channels, you become invisible proof. You're no longer limited by the method, only by the faith behind your word. So I say again, keep declaring, God is my immediate supply. Help is on the way, even from sources unseen. That is the loop, that is the law. Now you're called to action on. Stay open, stay alert, stay expectant for your help to arrive, sometimes wrapped in surprise, sometimes delivered through deeders, always on time. And when it comes, don't question it. Receive it, thank it, remember you are supported by supply that never fails. And as those channels begin to open, your world reshapes around that truth. And you become living proof that when God's supply is within you, you can't run out. And help really does arrive. Through unexpected channels, time and time again. There is a sacred principle waiting to be understood and internalized. God is man's immediate supply. And that means help doesn't always show up from the place you expect, but always from somewhere, often through channels you would never design yourself. It might arrive as an anonymous gift, a forgotten favor from a casual acquaintance, a job offer from someone you barely know, a small act of kindness carried by a stranger at just the right moment. And when that happens, you begin to realize the power of the unstoppable supply law, where invisible provision shows up in visible ways, repeatedly, even seemingly miraculously, as though the universe itself is whispering. Who sent you that blessing? Probably God. Exactly as Florence Scovel Shinn taught with her invisible supply concept. And once you taste that unfolding, once you've experienced help arriving in unexpected packages, you have tapped into a sacred loop. You declare your need, you affirm your truth. God is my immediate supply. You hold the faith, you expect open doors, and supply finds its way to you even through detours and surprises. Because the universe is not punishing, the universe is not limited. It is generous and creative, constantly reshaping itself around your declarations. This becomes your connection point. Fear and limitation die when you trust divine orchestration beyond your logical plan, and a new pattern emerges. You speak your expectation. You remain alert, you notice the people, the suggestions, the clues you never would have planned. And help arrives not through your effort but through God's design, through unexpected channels. This is the secondary hook. The next time a friend texts out of the blue with good news, or a stranger's gesture solves your need, you can smile and know God has sent you supply again, through an unseen route. You loop it, speak the word, hold the faith, watch for help, and expect it from anywhere. And your call to action is simple but revolutionary. Stay open, stay aware, stay expectant, so when help arrives, whatever its form, you receive it without questioning. You say thank you with a heart of gratitude. You affirm again, God is my immediate supply. And you begin to live in a reality where lack cannot define your story. Because supply is not just occasional, it's unstoppable, flowing through unexpected channels again and again. And as your life begins to reshape around that truth, you'll live proof that when the divine is your provider, no need is too big, no route too unpredictable, and no moment too dark for light to break through. And truly, help is never where you look first, but always where you need it most. And that is the unstoppable supply law in motion. There is a divine rhythm behind supply that you may not yet understand. A rhythm that says help doesn't just come through your efforts, your plans, your expectations. It comes as a spiritual waveform that flows where faith opens the channel, often through people you wouldn't predict, routes you didn't design, and moments you didn't plan. Imagine being in a bind, uncertain how tomorrow will unfold, trusting, God is my immediate supply. And then someone you barely know, an old acquaintance, a face you've overlooked, a casual contact, offers just what you need. That is the viral hook in action. Who sent you that blessing? Probably God. Because supply doesn't always arrive predictably. It arrives miraculously. Once that happens, you experience the loop of declaration. I expect the unexpected. I trust the unseen. And then supply arrives again from another hidden channel, reinforcing the principle, training your heart to see not just closed doors, but divine detours. Here is the connection pointing. Fears crumble when you witness help arriving in unconventional ways. A refund from a forgotten account, a paycheck from a contact you forgot, a favor from a stranger, with nothing to tie it to effort, but everything to tie it to grace. And so you begin to notice you are not merely surviving, you are supported. And support comes not through your competence alone, but through divine orchestration that often steps in through the peripheral players. The secondary hook arrives when a completely unexpected person shows up with a word, a check, a card, a resource. And you realize help doesn't come from the usual suspects, but from the universe's surprise mechanics. You loop again. Affirm your supply, open your eyes, expect God's roots to show up through strangers, friends, coincidences. And the more you align with that expectation, the more channels begin opening, until you live in a frequency where lack cannot hold sway. Your call to action is clear: cultivate spiritual awareness so that no help slips by unseen, no blessing is dismissed because of your assumptions, and no door is overlooked. Receive what arrives, say thank you, I believe this is God's supply, and keep declaring, God is my immediate supply. Expect help through unexpected channels. When you live that way, failure is not your narrative. Supply is your signature. And every time something good shows up out of nowhere, you smile, knowing supply is unstoppable. Now imagine this: you've prayed, you've spoken, you've trusted, and still the road ahead looks uncertain, perhaps even impossible. But instead of watching doors shut, you begin to see windows open that you didn't even know existed. Suddenly a message pings late at night from someone you haven't talked to in years, a casual acquaintance, with a job tip or a word of encouragement. Or you find an envelope in the mail from a neighbor you barely know with a refund check. Or maybe a stranger in line at the store hears your fleeting comment and offers to connect you to someone who has exactly what you need. In those moments your heart leaps, and you ask, who let this happen? And upon reflection, you smile and realize, probably God. That is the viral hook in action. Who sent you that blessing? Probably God. Florence Scovel Shinn's invisible supply in action. When you see help arriving through people, places, paths you never anticipated, you begin to internalize the spiritual law: God is man's immediate supply, and it arrives through unexpected channels when you trust beyond the visible. This is why I loop this truth again and again in your spirit. You declare, I expect help through unexpected channels. You hold faith, you watch with soft eyes, and supply arrives again. From an old friend, a chance meeting, a delayed ride turned divine encounter. A pattern begins to form. That pattern becomes your daily expectation, your spiritual rhythm. That expectation begins to dismantle fear. That is the connection pointing. Fear shatters when you witness supply coming through unplanned sources. When despair says, there's no way, you say, but Spirit always finds a way. You come to understand that divine provision doesn't always take the straight route. It often arrives in curves and detours that feel miraculous. And the more you rely on your own efforts, the smaller your possibility pool. But when you align with divine orchestration, your possibilities multiply. Help arrives from people you've long forgotten, from doors you never knocked on, from people who don't even know they're offering a miracle. That realization shifts everything. And that is your secondary hook. The next time someone seemingly random delivers exactly what you needed, you know beyond doubt, this is God moving supply through invisible channels again. You loop once more. Affirm supply, expect surprise, remain open. And with repeated practice, you begin to live unlocked. You're no longer searching in the same places, asking the same people, pleading the same fears. You are watching for mystery, anticipating the miracle in the margins. Now that pattern rewrites your world. And your call to action is beautifully simple: train your spiritual eyes to see every incident, every interruption, every sidestep as a potential supply route. Receive the help, however it arrives, with gratitude. Say thank you. I sense this is God's immediate supply. Reaffirm, God is my inexhaustible provider. and then give your attention to the next divine detour. That's how you teach your faith to expect the unexpected. That's how you become magnetized to miracles. That's how lack loses its voice in your life and supply becomes your signature. Where once you strapped on your plans, now you open your palms. Where once you held tightly, now you release gently, and the world begins to shape itself around your new frequencing. Help arrives without pushing, doors open without knocking, and blessings land without scripts. Because the law is simple, God is man's immediate supply. Help is unstoppable. Help often comes through the unexpected. Speak that truth. Live it. Then watch as your life becomes filled with invisible supply made visible again and again. When you truly step into the awareness that God is man's immediate supply, your world begins to shift. Not slowly, not just in mood, but in visible circumstances. And you start noticing patterns you once misread, somebody calling out of the blue, bearing information or encouragement precisely at the moment you needed hope, an envelope arriving with unexpected money, a casual chat in a coffee line that leads to the solution you'd been praying for. The universe delivering help through someone who doesn't even know they've become your angel. Because, beloved, the unseen hand is working through people and portals you never scheduled into your plan. This is where the loop deepens. You reaffirm, I expect help. Even from unseen channels. You hold your posture of expectancy, you open your spiritual eyes, and you receive again and again through fragrances, through footsteps, through whispers, through strangers, friends, coincidences that feel orchestrated. That loop trains your heart, and the connection point breaks your limitationing. Fear says, it must come this way. But divine wisdom shows you, it often comes another way. You learn that provision isn't blocked by method, it's freed by surrender. The secondary hook emerges when a completely unexpected act arrives. Maybe a stranger returns a lost wallet with cash. Maybe an old contact sends a job lead you forgot you mentioned. Maybe a childhood friend reaches out with spiritual encouragement, just when you feel unseen. At that moment you nod inwardly. I know who this came from. And you see supply isn't random, it's responsive. It's responsive to your faith, your openness, your willingness to declare supply even when the evidence looks thin. And so you loop again, speak the truth, expect the deliverance, watch for details, receive what arrives, especially from the unexpected, and supply magnifies. Let me call you now to action. Train your spiritual awareness daily. Notice every slight twist in your day as potential supply. Receive it with gratitude. Affirm again, God is my immediate supply. And release expectation without insistence. That posture becomes your new practice. That practice rewires your reality. The world begins to mirror that frequency, not just occasionally, but consistently. Doors open after delays. Conversations lead to breakthroughs. Miracles arrive not through effort, but through divine surprise. And finally, you walk through life not anxious about how needs will be met, but secure in the knowledge that supply is unstoppable. Supply often arrives from unexpected people, and divine provision is your birthright. The law is simple, God is man's immediate supply. Help arrives in mysterious, breathtaking ways when you believe it will. So speak it, loop it, and watch your life overflow with invisible help made visible again and again. Now picture this: you're weary, perhaps disheartened, struggling to see a way forward. You've believed in prayers and affirmations, yet your path feels stagnant. Then, without warning, help arrives. Not through your plan or your best effort, but through an unexpected whisper of divine orchestration. Maybe it's a message from someone you'd forgot you knew, offering the exact encouragement or opportunity you needed. Maybe it's a total stranger stepping up in a moment of crisis, giving just the resources you prayed for. These incidents don't happen by chance. They are the work of the unstoppable supply law. Every time that happens, your heart whispers, who sent you that blessing? Probably God. That becomes the viral hook you carry in your spirit. You begin to realize that supply is not limited to your imagination or controlled by your timeline. It flows through surprising channels precisely when your need and faith meet. The loop deepens. You speak belief. God is my immediate supply. You hold faith through delay or uncertainty. You remain open to unconventional channels. And then you receive in ways you hadn't seen coming. You begin to see this pattern catching fire. You wait for help to follow your script. Then you're taught that divine supply prefers the improvisation. This is your connection pointing. When your plan stalls, divine help doesn't always follow logic. It flows through love, compassion, timing, coincidence, and grace. Fear says, I need to figure this out myself. But faith says, I release it to the one who knows me better than I know myself. Then the secondary hook hits. Someone who has no agenda, who couldn't possibly have known your need, becomes God's vessel, an old neighbor offering groceries, a childhood friend offering a job contact, a random investor offering to buy your art. And you exhale softly, because by now you divine creativity doesn't just respond, it surprises. That's the moment fear falls away and trust rises up. You're no longer living from contract or calculation but from covenant and surrender. Because you've seen that supply bypasses walls when you allow. At that point, you loop again with power, you affirm your need, you expect miraculous delivery in mysterious ways, you stay vigilant. You receive with gratitude, and you declare again, God is my immediate supply. Even when I can't see how. This practice rewrites your stress narrative. It rewires your expectation system. You move from trying harder into trusting deeper. You create spiritual space where angels drop supplies from unexpected skies. So here's your call to actioning. Make this your new normal. Begin each morning by saying, I expect divine supply today, possibly through roads I haven't imagined. Keep eyes open for quiet clues. A stranger's listening ear, a casual text, a forgotten check. Receive each one with open thanksgiving. Affirm, thank you. This is supply from unseen sources. And then loop your faith. God is my unstoppable supply. As you do, you move into a daily rhythm where need no longer triggers panic. Instead, it triggers expectancy. You're living proof that lack doesn't dictate your days, because supply is built into your identity. The world doesn't break you. It helps you. And often, not in the sunshine, it drops blessings in the shadows. That's the miracle that Florence Scovel Shinn taught. That help arrives most powerfully when you stop limiting God to your plan. Supply flows through unseen channels, through the ordinary hands of ordinary people, through unlikely circumstances, and it arrives again and again. So speak hope, speak trust, speak expectantly, then stay still enough to notice, stay curious enough to receive, stay grateful enough to loop the blessing back into faith. Because the law is this: when you trust God's immediate supply, help shows up through unexpected doors, and the world groans less and reveals more of heaven's heart. Let your life be the echo of that promise. Let it loop loud in the narrative of your soul, and watch as the stream of supply becomes your unmistakable signature. Unstoppable, unexpected, undeserved, yet always unfolding. Now your faith is waking up to something extraordinary. Supply isn't just a floodgate that opens once. It's a continual river that runs beneath every situation, and it often enters through surprising tributaries. You think help must arrive through the usual door. Through your effort, your plan, your competence. But divine supply delights in coming through side allies and windows you never saw, through conversations you almost didn't have. Through people you passed by until one day they turned and handed you exactly what you needed. That whisper in your spirit reminds you. Who sent you that blessing? Probably God. And once you begin to trace the miracles back, you see invisible hands weaving your story together. The loop builds deeper. You affirm your supply. You expect surprise. You open, you receive, and you testify. And then it happens again. You're rewiring your spiritual rhythm. You don't wait for signals. You look for signs. You don't wait for headlines. You watch for harmony in the small moments. When you learn to pivot instantly from, I don't know how, into, I trust supply. You step into a vibration where impossibilities dissolve. That becomes your connection. Pointing logic fails, but divine logic prevails. Your plans stall, but God's canal carries hope through someone you would never think to ask. And here's where the secondary hook deepens. The next time someone you thought was irrelevant becomes your rescuer. An old contact reminds you of your brilliance. A stranger opens a door you'd closed decades ago. You don't merely thank them. You recognize supply isn't charitable, it's covenantal. It's divine design, not coincidence. At that moment, faith breathes into your bones. You loop this new knowledge again. God's supply is immediate, unlimited, often unseen. Help arrives through unexpected channels. You begin to reshape your mindset. Need no longer snarls into panic. Instead, it becomes a trigger for expectancy. Worry doesn't grip you. Surprise greets you. You lean into the unknown with this statement. I trust infinite supply to arrive often and in ways beyond my control. That declaration opens a kind of spiritual alignment. Doors begin to swing inward, not outward. Opportunities arrive from emails you almost deleted, messages in groups you almost exited, people you assumed had forgotten you. Those are the supply carriers. Divine couriers sent to your life. Your call to action emerges here. Train your inner ear to hear supply before it arrives, and your outer hand to receive it without skepticism. Turn every interruption into a prayer, every delay into a waiting room for supply, without resistance. When the help arrives, from unlikely channels, receive it fast and free. Say, thank you. I know this is God's immediate provision. Let gratitude loop it back into faith. Let testimony seal it into truth. You no longer have to manufacture momentum. Divine movement begins to happen because you invited it through declaration, expectation, and surrender. Supply is unstoppable. Not because you worked harder, but because you trusted smarter. Now you are living proof. People see it. You no longer carry the anxious posture of trying to make things happen. Instead, you breathe deeply and walk expectantly, knowing supply will show up, and often from directions no ordinary mind could have scheduled. That's the miracle. That's the release. That's the unstoppable supply law in motion. Speak it daily, loop it always, live it constantly, and watch your world overflow in ways you never anticipated. There comes a moment in the soul's journey when the pressure of trying to make everything happen finally breaks. And that's not your breaking point. That's your breakthrough. The need to control, the anxiety of how and when and through whom. It dissolves and something astonishing takes its place. Trust in the unstoppable supply. When you fully accept that your supply does not depend on effort, approval, timing, or even who you know, you step into a rare peace, a supernatural confidence that radiates far beyond your current circumstances. This is not passive faith. It is an inner fire that calmly says, if help hasn't arrived yet, it's still on its way, and it may come through the most unexpected channel. And just like that, you loop your awareness back into trutho. What looks delayed is often simply being rerouted. You may not see the answer forming, but supply is never stagnant. It's flowing behind the curtain of your life, rearranging people, places, and possibilities so that exactly what you need arrives with divine precision. Let this become your connection pointing. Instead of asking, how will it happen? Ask, what divine arrangement is forming on my behalf right now? This activates a deeper layer of spiritual intelligence, where you begin to see with your inner eye. What was once panic becomes prophecy. What was once fear becomes fuel. You no longer wrestle with reality. You work with divine law, and the more you speak the language of supply, the more it speaks back. You say, doors open for me, even where I see none. Solutions find me, even in silence. The invisible supply is already assigned to my name. That becomes your vibration. That becomes your field. And then it happens. Someone who never noticed you before suddenly thinks of you. An old friend, now in a new position, feels led to reconnect. A client out of nowhere offers more than you expected. You smile, not in surprise, but in certainty. You say, of course. That's the law in action. And here comes the secondary hook. You realize it's never really about the people. It's about the pattern. The people are instruments, yes, but the pattern is divine. And once you see the pattern of unlikely help, invisible guidance, perfect timing, you begin to trust not just in what arrives, but in the how. The universe is not random. God is not unorganized. And your supply is not delayed. You are being equipped in every moment with what's needed for the next step. And your only job is to stay spiritually available. To speak what you desire, not what you fear. Because if fear shapes your words, fear shapes your world. But when faith fuels your speech, your world transforms. So here's your call to action. Break the habit of forecasting failure. Replace every complaint with a confident declaration. When you're tempted to say, nothing ever works out, replace it with, I trust help is arriving now, in unexpected and glorious ways. Train your tongue to build what you want. Train your thoughts to expect miracles, not as a rare event but as a regular rhythm. Keep looping this spiritual cycle. Speak it, expect it, receive it, affirm it, speak it again. This is not blind hope. This is law in motion. And once you begin to operate from this rhythm, life stops being a battlefield and becomes a garden. Yes, challenges may come, but you'll notice they're no longer overwhelming. You know something most people don't too, that supply is already on the way. And that changes everything. So speak the blessing now. Speak the overflow now. Speak the freedom now. Your word is your wand. The channel may be hidden, but the source never is. You are not forgotten. You are not unlucky. You are aligned with divine provision, and it will not fail you. Say it again. My help arrives in perfect ways, through unexpected channels, because I trust the unstoppable supply. There's something magnificent that happens when you stop obsessing over where your help will come from and instead begin expecting that it will come. Because it always does. You shift from fear to faith, from panic to power. And that's not a small shift. It's the exact moment your reality begins to reshape itself. Suddenly, things that used to worry you begin to lose their weight. Conversations change. The atmosphere around you lightens. Why? Because you're no longer trying to manufacture outcomes from your limited human view. You're operating under divine law. And under divine law, the unexpected is not random. It's orchestrated. When the source is God, the supply is unstoppable. That's the hook. That's the magic. That's the miracle. Every time you say, I don't know how, but I know it will, you open the floodgates to blessings that have been waiting to reach you. You take the burden off your shoulders and place it where it belongs, into the hands of divine intelligence. And in that moment of surrender, everything begins to flow again. You loop into the rhythm of grace. You reconnect with your spiritual wiring. You start living in alignment with your real source. And that's when help begins showing up in the most unexpected places. A chance meeting, a delayed email, a stranger's compliment, a forgotten favor remembered. Every moment becomes sacred when you recognize that supply doesn't always come through the front door. Sometimes it climbs in through the back window, just to surprise you. And that's not an accident. That's your supply making its way to you, through the open path of least resistance. So let me ask you now, are you blocking your own supply by insisting it has to come one specific way? Are you refusing the gift because it didn't arrive in the wrapping paper you wanted? The universe will not be boxed in by your expectations. It is more creative, more resourceful, more responsive than you can imagine. When you release control, you release resistance. And in that release, you make room for more than you asked for. That's your connection point. Letting go of how it shows up is how it shows up. Can you feel that? That shift in energy, that lightness in your chest, that is the feeling of stepping into divine alignment. And from this place, you start speaking differently. You begin to say things like, everything I need is finding me. Help is arriving even now. My channels are open, and my good is flowing toward me at full speed. You say it not because you see it, but because you know it. And in the language of spirit, knowing always precedes seeing. That's the great reversal. The world says, I'll believe it when I see it. But the law says, you'll see it when you believe it. That is the secondary hook. You don't wait for evidence to believe. You believe and then create the evidence. Your belief becomes the magnet. Your word becomes the wand. And your vibration becomes the key. Now listen carefully, because this is where most people trip up. They believe for a moment, but then fear creeps in. Doubt whispers, what if it doesn't happen? And they speak against their own miracle. But not you. Not anymore. You are now aware. You know that your word is your wand. You are careful with it. You don't declare defeat when things look quiet. You don't say, it's not working. You say, it's working in ways I can't yet see. You don't say nothing's happening. You say, everything is unfolding behind the scenes. You understand now that your words form the mold, and the universe fills it. So your role is simply keep casting the mold. Keep blessing the moment. Keep calling in your provision. Keep affirming your worth. Keep looping the truth. If you don't see anything yet, say it anyway. If you feel like giving up, speak strength into your spirit. The supply is already prepared, but it must be claimed through unwavering faith. This is not begging, this is declaring, and declarations move faster than doubt. So declare boldly, say, my path is clear, my help is arriving, and I am always supported. Say it when it's easy. Say it when it's hard. Say it when it feels like no one is listening. Because heaven is always listening. The law responds to your inner knowing, and your knowing grows stronger every time you speak it aloud. That is your spiritual muscle. And now comes the call to action. You must start training your speech the way you'd train your body. Eliminate language that contradicts your faith. Banish phrases like, I can't afford that, or, that never happens for me, or it's too late now. Replace them with declarations that open the floodgates. My supply is limitless. My timing is perfect. My good always finds me. You're not being delusional. You're being divine. You're not ignoring facts. You're affirming higher truth. You are not limited to logic when you walk in spiritual law. So don't just say what you see. Say what you desire. Speak what aligns, not what's lacking. The world has trained you to narrate the problem. But now, you are retraining your world to reflect your power. So, let the words come easy. Let the energy rise. Let the doubt melt. Let the unexpected help flood in. Through the kindness of strangers, through sudden shifts, through surprising offers, through divine reroutes. You no longer need to force anything. You are no longer waiting in vain. You are walking in the certainty of an unstoppable supply. And every time you affirm it, the channels grow wider, the blessings grow bolder, and the miracles move faster. Speak it now. I am ready to receive. I am open to the unexpected. I release all limits. The supply has already been released, and it is rushing toward me now. Have you ever found yourself in a moment where the clock was ticking, the weight was heavy, and you whispered, there's no way out of this? only for a miracle to walk through the door in the shape of someone or something you never expected. That is not luck, my dear. It is the unstoppable supply of the divine, arriving not from the direction you looked, but from the source that never sleeps, never forgets, never fails. Because God is man's immediate supply, and what you call a coincidence is just the disguise of divine order in motion. Sometimes it's a stranger's kindness, other times it's a phone call you weren't planning to answer, or a message that lands in your inbox just when your spirit needs to be reminded that you are not forgotten. There is a secret river that flows behind all appearances, and when you align yourself with faith, when you speak not in fear but in trust, that river breaks through the dams of delay and shows up right in your living room. You may think the door is closed, but Spirit opens windows through people, places, and paths you couldn't have predicted, and if you keep trying to control the how, you'll miss the miracle of now. Stop assuming the help has to come from the one you're waiting on. It may come from the one you've never even met. The moment you declare, "Divine supply is flowing to me now," the universe begins rearranging itself, not tomorrow, now, not through effort, through surrender, not through struggle, through alignment. You do not chase supply. You receive it. You do not beg for rescue. You speak your freedom and it finds you. You don't need to know who will help you. You need to know that help is guaranteed. Loop this truth in your soul. The source of supply is not a person. It's not a job. It's not a bank. It is God moving through unexpected vessels, infinite in expression, but singular in intention, to bless you. Let that be your comfort. Let that be your courage. Say it aloud with me. Even if I don't see a way, the way sees me. You see, when your heart is open and your word is aligned, divine timing becomes divine delivery. You'll notice money shows up in the mail, a solution appears mid-sentence. A friend you haven't spoken to in years sends the exact support you didn't realize you needed. And you'll laugh, because it's so specific, so perfect, so unmistakably timed, that your only response is, "This could only be God." And when that moment comes, don't forget what brought it to you. It wasn't desperation, it wasn't panic, it was your decision to trust, to speak, to believe. Don't look at the sky and wonder when. Look within and declare, "It is already done." Because when you say it, you claim it. When you believe it, you receive it. And when you align with it, you walk into rooms that were built just for you. There is no such thing as being stuck when you walk with the divine. Even closed doors whisper, "This isn't your way," but your way is being built. Your job is to prepare for the blessing, not predict its path. You water the soil with faith. You speak the words of abundance. And then, when you least expect it, the harvest arrives, carried by hands you didn't see coming, wrapped in grace, signed with love. Don't be surprised when your next breakthrough doesn't look like your last. The unstoppable supply does not repeat. It creates anew. If you are in a moment of waiting, let that wait be filled with faith, not fear. Say aloud, "Even now supply is on its way to me, from channels I haven't imagined, through people I haven't met, with timing more perfect than I could plan." Say it again. Say it until it lives in your bones, because that declaration activates the invisible currents. It moves the chessboard, it parts the sea. It sets the stage for the blessing that was always meant for you. Too many live in spiritual poverty because they limit God to their own expectations. But you are not here to survive by logic. You are here to thrive by divine law. And that law says when you speak in alignment, the entire universe rearranges to deliver. So cast your burden of worry. Release the belief that it's too late. Unclench your fists and open your palms, because help is already walking toward you. When you release fear, you make space for supply. When you release control, you make room for miracles. And when you speak with trust, you give permission to heaven to move through earth in your favor. Let that truth loop in your spirit every time you feel doubt. Rising help is not a maybe. It is a promise. Supply is not a question. It is your birthright. Declare, "God is my source, and supply is flowing to me from known and unknown channels, seen and unseen, expected and unexpected, now and always." And when you do, don't just say it once. Let it echo. Let it become your daily mantra. Let it dance off your lips like a song you can't stop singing. Because the more you speak it, the more it takes form. Your word is your wand, and the supply responds to the rhythm of your belief. So choose your rhythm wisely. Speak only what you desire, not what you fear. Affirm your support, your provision, your overflow. And watch as life bends to your declaration. Your supply isn't stuck. It's stored, waiting for the sound of your faith to release it. Speak, and it shall appear. Speak, and the invisible becomes visible. Speak, and help will come running. sometimes dressed as a friend, sometimes wrapped in a challenge, always carrying your answer. So today, right now, don't wait for things to look different before you believe. Believe, and the difference will appear. That's the power of the unstoppable supply. That's the promise of the law. And that's the invitation I leave you with now. Speak, trust, receive, and don't be surprised when help shows up through the last place you'd expect. Because that's exactly where the divine loves to move. Unexpected, unstoppable, unmistakably for you. The moment you stop trying to figure out where the blessing will come from, the blessing begins to move freely toward you. That is the law. That is the divine intelligence behind all things. You see, it's not your job to trace the supply. It's your job to trust the source. The channels are none of your concern, because the source uses all channels. People, circumstances, delays, detours. They are just packaging for the same divine messaging you are provided for. Over and over again, I have said, God is man's immediate supply, and I meant it. Not future supply. Not someday supply, immediate. But for that truth to activate in your life, your word must agree with it. Your tongue must align with heaven. Your speech must not argue with your faith. You must speak like it's already yours, live like it's already arriving, move like it's already been promised. Because it has. Your very breath is proof that you are sustained. Do you think the one who gave you breath would forget to provide for your needs? Of course not. But sometimes the provision comes disguised. As inconvenience, as redirection, as someone you never would have called on. That's what makes the supply unstoppable. It doesn't wait for perfect conditions, it creates them. And once you begin to understand this, once you loop this truth in your soul day after day, you'll stop asking, when will my help come? And start declaring, my help is already here, even if I don't see it yet. That is the turning point. That is where things shift. Not outside, but inside. Because when you turn on the inner light of faith, outer doors begin to swing open. The unstoppable supply doesn't need approval to enter your life. It needs your permission to be received. And you give that permission through the words you speak. So speak life, speak overflow, speak divine delivery. Say aloud, everything I need is on its way to me now. Through the path of least resistance and the highest good. Don't just say it once. Say it until your bones remember it. Say it until it silences the voice of fear. Say it until you become the very vessel the supply flows through. Because when you speak from trust, you don't just receive the blessing, you become a blessing. You become the unexpected help someone else needs. And so the divine circle of giving continues. You are not here to scrape by. You are not here to hustle for crumbs. You are a child of the infinite, and the infinite does not run out. Let that loop in your heart when fear tries to bargain with lack. You are backed by a source that cannot be drained. And though the world may tell you to be realistic, I tell you, be faithful, be expectant, be bold in your speech and generous in your belief, for the world bends to the soul that speaks from alignment. And now, my dear, I invite you to do one more thing. Take action, not in panic but in power. What would you do today if you knew supply was guaranteed? Go do it. Write the email, make the call, take the step, open the door. Because when you move with trust, the universe moves with you. And if ever you find yourself doubting again, come back to this truth. Help is always on the way, but rarely from the place you expect. That's how the divine works. It arrives wrapped in mystery, through people and paths your mind could never have designed, but your soul always recognized. And when it arrives, you'll know this was not chance. This was not random. This was grace. This was the unstoppable supply. And it was always, always meant for you.